Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Mr. McKinley was talking earlier and raised concerns about the fact that coal in the U.S., federal lands are off limits. Many jobs have been lost. You acknowledge that it's always bad for folks to be unemployed. A large number of the people in Mr. McKinley's district and in my district are now unemployed as a result of policies of this administration, including your agency itself. And you indicated, and correct me if I got it wrong, you indicated that you were just doing your job, trying to set examples, but I would submit that because of the concerns that Mr. McKinley raised with China increasing even after the Paris Accord was reached by the President, and India, according to Mr. McKinley, is going to be doubling their use of coal, and of course they want to be energy independent, as many nations want to, and they have some coal. I'm just concerned that we're actually doing more harm to the world's environment, particularly in relationship to the air, because when we take our previously reasonable regulations and we ratchet it up and we throw folks out of work, we raise the cost of energy in our country, and we put our manufacturers at a disadvantage, and then they decide that it's easier in some cases, and some not, but in some cases they decide it's easier to go places where they don't have those regulations, whether it be Mexico or China or India or some other nation, but where they don't have the regulations that we have, that we're actually creating a net increase in air pollution. And I'm just wondering, have y'all not looked at that? Now, I understand your job is just the United States, but when you're putting my folks out of work and Mr. McKinley's folks out of work, and I think there's a good likelihood that there's a net increase, I'm just wondering, have you all looked at the possibility that you may be inadvertently creating, and we can disagree about what is and isn't a pollutant, but are you inadvertently creating a net increase in the northern hemisphere for the air that we all breathe, whether it's in China or India or in Salem, Virginia?
Well, if you're looking at greenhouse gases, sir, it doesn't matter where it's emitted. I think it matters to all of us. I will say that we've been working with a lot of businesses, a lot of international businesses that are actually expressing serious concern that we do take notice of climate change and take action on it. But I'll also say that the administration, I think, is very cognizant that the coal communities, the communities that rely on coal, are facing significant challenges. And we're interested in really moving forward with the President's Power Plus proposal to see how we can build an economy that will be more sustainable and
look, I don't disagree with that. That's an area where, I think we've got to put some resources there to try to help these communities. But that being said, what do you do in a community where we had a dispute over a piece of land, because in Dickinson County, in my district, there were 2 pieces of flat land in the entire county that could be built on, and they needed a new high school, so they had to use eminent domain to take one of the 2 pieces. How are we going to reinvent the economy? They have mountains, they have water, and they have trees.
Yeah.
We don't have flat land. And in Buchanan County, the largest chunk of our flat land is formerly a surface mine that leveled things out, but folks think that's bad. So it really puts us in a dilemma. And then I have another dilemma that I think I have to bring up, and that is many of my constituents don't understand an EPA that has, 8 buildings in the Washington, D.C. area, has got 12 different zip codes, got so many employees floating around up here, and they say to me, why don't you defund the EPA completely? And I have always defended by saying, well, let's look at our clean water programs. There are other things that the EPA does that I think are good. And then we have the Flint, Michigan problem.
Yes.
And I don't know how I'm going to tell those folks now, well, we've got these programs like clean water, when clearly, and I know that there was some dispute in another committee earlier this week, but clearly the EPA dropped the ball. It looks like to me, I was in on one of those hearings in O&I or in Government Reform Committee, and it looked clear to me like one of your employees was doing a cover-up, told Ms. Walters of Flint, Michigan, that they had handled Del Toro, the employee of the EPA who it appears was punished for blowing the whistle on the lead out there. I think that's a problem. And then a former employee now, Ms. Hedman, comes in and says that she didn't think she did anything wrong. My constituent, Mark Edwards, a Virginia Tech professor, and look, I don't know his politics, but Blacksburg is not a conservative area. It's one of the most liberal areas of Virginia and one of the most liberal areas in my district. But he says, I guess you don't have, if you're part of a government agency, it means you don't have to say you're sorry, and said that that she was willfully blind, unremorseful, and completely unrepentant and unable to learn from her mistakes. How do I defend an EPA that's the condemnation coming out of my district from Professor Dr. Edwards? That's the thing I've always pointed to as being one of the good things. My time is up. I don't know if the chairman will allow you to answer that or not. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Did you want to respond or not?
I'm sure it's not an easy answer, sir. But you know, I've asked the Office of our Inspector General to take a look at this. I think the distinction I was trying to make is Flint is no doubt a tragedy. You know, I know how it came about. Why, I don't know, but I know how it came about. And the question for EPA is, did we respond quickly enough when we found out that there was a problem? Did everybody raise it as quickly as they could so that we could address it? That's a significant issue of accountability that we need to face. And we will face that. The individual in the region did resign knowing it was on her watch, but we'll see what the Office of the Inspector General says. But I think people...
I don't think it's just the Inspector General, Madam. I believe it's also you. You're the boss.
Yes, yes.
Gentleman's time has expired. At this time, the chair will recognize the gentleman.